Right, hello guys, and welcome back. Tomorrow we have a brand new dungeon coming out, Equilibrium, and today I thought I would show you all of the builds I would recommend you to take into the experience if you are wanting to try it out as, say, your first contest experience, or you are a regular and you just want to know what the best builds are going into the experience. And today's video is going to feature gameplay of all of the builds, and I'm also going to give some meta commentary on the dungeon contest experience meta as a whole, basically give you guys pointers on what you should be bringing in as a stack from the point of view of your team wanting to do well, not necessarily just wanting to go in and just complete it also. Because if you didn't know, I am a competitive racer. We are going to be going for the world's first, me and my team. So everything that I say in this video is slightly going to be catered towards those people who are also wanting to do well. So yes, there is going to be meta commentary in this video. And also, humility aside for just a second, myself and my team in the two previous contest experiences, those being Desert Perpetual and Epic Desert Perpetual, came 14th and 11th respectively in both of those races, so I'd like to think I know a thing or two when it comes to crafting your characters for these experiences. So we are going to start with Warlocks, and just a little piece of meta commentary to start with: if you are not going in with at least one Warlock into this race, you might want to reconsider. You are always going to want one Warlock. In fact, our team is going in with 3 Warlocks, because Warlocks right now are the best class in the game by far. There is no competition, especially with what we now know is on the ban list, and the reintroduction of the not swap modifier. Classes like Hunter are just not going to be used in this dungeon. So I would strongly recommend at least going in with 3 Warlocks and always 1. If you're not going in with any Warlocks, you have no chance of clearing the experience. So for your Warlocks, these are the builds that you are going to want to focus on. The first one is going to be a getaway artist setup, and this is going to be what you run for the majority of the raid the whole time if this is your job, if you are the guy who is dealing damage, basically not the well Warlock. So on getaway artist, as you guys all know, you consume your arc grenade to get yourself an arc soul, and you can pair this with aspects like Hellion and Feed the Void, and we'll get into the subclass and stuff later, but essentially just know that this is literally one of the best builds in the game right now, and that is what you're going to be using for the majority of your time in the dungeon. Even on your damage loadouts, you will keep getaway artist on over something like Sanguine, because the neutral game for getaway artist is just too good. So because I don't want to make this video too long, I just want to kind of quickly go through all of our subclass selections and stuff. For the super, we are going with Needle Storm, because even though it is a little bit inconsistent, it's still a very solid super. For the abilities, I have Phoenix Dive, Arcane Needle, obviously the Storm Grenade for my getaway artist. I have Feed the Void and Hellion. Then for fragments, I have Ruin, Protection, Hope, and Dominance. Dominance is 1000% needed because this is going to allow your Prismatic Grenade to apply Weaken, and it's also going to allow your Arc Soul to apply Jolt, which is really good. I have Ruin here, which is going to give me +10 weapon stat. The only reason I have it is for the weapon stat. You could just as easily swap this for something like Facet of Purpose if you would prefer more survivability and get Woven Mail because you have Needle Storm equipped, but me personally, I back myself and I don't think I need it, but I can swap to it if, you know, somehow the neutral game portion of an encounter is incredibly difficult. As for your stats, in a not swap environment, it is very important that you have high weapons and high super. So as you can see here, I have 170 weapons and 110 super, and if I swap to my damage loadout, spoilers, in not swap, you are still swapping to damage and neutral game loadouts, I have triple super font on my helmet, which is going to put me up to effectively 160 super, and then I still have 170 weapons because my boots are reserved for surge mods. So these stats are pretty good, especially with Needle Storm. It doesn't benefit too much from the super stat, so having a lower super stat is generally fine. I could honestly put this down to 100 and put another 10 points into weapons, but essentially that is the main thing. And the trouble with not swap is that you also have to find stats that are decent in neutral game as well as damage. So I've also got 50 melee roughly, 80 grenade here, and then 57 class. Now in terms of the armor pieces that actually allow me to get this, my helmet is a Paragon with a tertiary stat in weapons, my getaway artist is Grenadier with a tertiary stat in weapons, my chest piece is a Gunner with a tertiary stat in super, my boots are again Gunner with a tertiary stat in super, and then finally my Bond is a Specialist with a tertiary stat in super. Armor set bonuses are also very important when it comes to contest experiences, and the two that I am running is 2-piece Ferro Potent and 2-piece Ion Adapter. Ideally, you would go 2-piece Ferro and 2-piece Smoke Jumper. However, Smoke Jumper is currently unobtainable, and Ion Adapter is still very good, and Ferro Potent is basically the new Smoke Jumper. It's effectively better. Essentially, what this does is whenever you receive healing effects like Devour or, you know, Restoration, Cure, picking up orbs with Better Already, for example, you get 10% damage resistance for 8 seconds, which is pretty insane. So it is just very good damage resistance, constant, almost never falls off. And then of course, Ion Adapter gives you a 20% splash damage reduction when you get kills with micro missile weapons such as rocket sidearms or rocket pulses, which actually is a nice segue into the weapons you ought to be taking into this experience. So I've actually gone for Tenacious Mastery and Psi Eterna. With high weapon stat, you are essentially going to want to be playing double special all the time. You can use a primary if you'd like to, but double special with high weapon stat is still very good, especially if you run a weapon like Tenacious Mastery, which has around 86 ammo gen. I'll hide my camera here so you can see we have 86 ammo gen on Tenacious Mastery. That is with a mod and enhanced air trigger, which is pretty good. One thing I want to say about weapon choices is these are not final. I could swap all of these around depending on the encounter that we get. I could literally end up using a lightsaber for DPS. We just don't know yet. I've just kind of put these as placeholders, and I've made my damage loadouts as placeholders, which, by the way, all of these dim links will be in the description, so don't worry about that. But yeah, that is essentially your main Warlock build. If you are not the Well Warlock, it is going to be Getaway Artist throughout the entire experience. But then if you are the Well Warlock, you have a couple of options here. Your first is to use Boots of the Assembler, and that is what you, again, are going to be using throughout the whole thing because you can't swap because of not swap. And as for your fragments and your class and all that, obviously we're going to run with Well of Radiance. I've also gone for Incinerator Snap, Healing Grenade, Phoenix Dive, Icarus Dash, which is pretty underrated in contest content if you ask me. Very good for avoiding enemy attacks and for movement as well. Hellion. Then for the fragments, I have Torches, Singeing, Benevolence, and Searing, but you can kind of mix and match those. Just make sure that Benevolence is there because it's probably the most important. Then for your weapons, again, doesn't really matter. Stats, again, we have high weapons and high super. The super actually doesn't matter as much on a well because all it does is give you extra time on the well, so weapons is slightly more important on your solar build. And we also have 2-piece Ferropotent and 2-piece Ion Adapter set bonuses once again. But for me personally, I am not going to be playing Well Warlock this time round. It is going to be the role of another one of my teammates. You could also go for a Speaker's Sight angle if for whatever reason you encounter an encounter that requires you to have 2 wells, which in a dungeon is highly unlikely, but I've just prepared this build just in case. I will never use these, but if you are the Solar Warlock, you are for the majority of the time going to be on Boots of the Assembler. And finally, the last build that I have on Warlock is actually the Storm Dancer's Brace build, which I made on the channel last week. This build is actually incredible for ad clear. So if we get any encounter that has no boss and is just all about mechanics, has high enemy density, wants you to clear ads very quickly, then this build is going to excel with how quickly you are able to get your super back and so on and so on. You can go watch the full video on that if you'd like. But again, like I said, I will have all of the dim links to these builds in the description. This is just here as just a general ad clear setup. I could very much also go for the Getaway Artist setup once again, though I just wanted to have this on here because, to be honest, I want an excuse to use this in contest because it's so good. It works really well in high level content. But yeah, that is mostly it for your Warlock. Before we end off, I do want to highlight what I am running on the artifact here, and it is mainly just a few important mods, and the main important mods are Gravitic Voltaic Charge here. Whenever you have an Arc or Void super equipped, increases the number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, basically a free charged up or elemental siphon. Kinetic Synthesis here to improve with ammo gen gains, because even if you aren't using this as like a damage method or whatever, picking up these bricks will give you special and heavy ammo progress, which is just nice for ammo gen. Power from Pain here, we've got basically the full suite of Void artifact perks. You have Power from Pain, Singularity Blade, and Void Infestation. And also got Sword Storm combo and combination Argent Blade. If I ever end up using a sword slash the lightsaber, then Dielectric, which is excellent for the arc build or any time that you are getting any arc debuff target kills, which is really nice. One last thing before we finish, for transitions between encounters, I will probably end up switching to Elethanim and then maybe a Strand loadout, or I'll keep Getaway Artist on, I'm not sure yet, but just make sure you have a micro missile frame grenade launcher on you so that you can get some traversal done really quickly. And then also, I am using a lot of special weapons, but try to have a primary weapon in at least one of your slots. I have the All or Nothing here in my top slot, which is a dynamic heat weapon. I have Firefly Desperado on here, which is going to be pretty good for this pulse rifle. So just try to have at least one primary weapon. And the rest of your guns just have like classics like Mint Retrograde. I have a Praedith here, which is good for total damage at long range. Got the Lightsaber, Choir, a decent rocket sidearm, the new Rocket Pulse with a good roll. I also have Parasite, Wolfsbane, a sword, and I'll probably add a rocket onto this list as well. But like I said, the weapons really are placeholders. It depends on the bosses that we get. Okay, so now we are moving on to the Titans. And again, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you are wanting to be competitive in this race and you want to finish the dungeon quickly, I would not recommend swapping onto anything other than a Warlock, at least to start with. So yes, you probably won't be playing a Titan, but if you only have a Titan, then this section is for you because, you know, if you don't have the choice to go for a Warlock, I can totally sympathize with that. So with Titan, what are we going to be doing? If you are a Titan, your job is to be basically the damage guy. In a rare scenario, it might be slightly different with something like Banner Shield, shield, but we're going to get to that. In a not swap context, in a damager role as a Titan, you are basically just going to want to use Curus of the Falling Star the whole time with Thunder Crash on Prismatic. Arc Titan is basically not really needed anymore, especially in a trio setting. Bolt Charge stuff, because we don't have flashover anymore, don't really want to use that. So we are just going to be going with Prismatic and Curus. And the reason for that is obviously because it increases the damage of your Thunder Crash by a lot. And if you have good stats like 150 super and 170 weapon like I do, you are going to be dealing quite a lot of damage in the contest environment, even around the not swap modifier. So let's get into the subclass real quick. Again, going through this quickly, we're going to have Thunder Crash. I've gone for Thruster, Frenzy Blade, and the Shackle Grenade. I've also gone for the Knockout and Consecration aspects. Surprise, surprise, you are still going to be doing the Consecration spam build, even in contest, even off any melee increasing exotics like Worm Gods or the Syntho class item. It's still very good on its own, or still very decent on its own. Fragments, we have Protection, Courage, which is going to be there to increase the damage of our Thunder Crash by 10%, Balance, and Ruin. Again, I've got this on here to boost my weapon stat. You could swap this for like Facet of Dawn, for example, but I don't really need that. I don't think it's terribly needed. Weapons wise, again, very similar to the Warlock. I've got a Praxic Blade ready. I've got a Micro Missile ready for movement. Got some SMGs for PKs, which we're going to talk about momentarily. Again, couple double special rocket pulses, Micro Missile weapons, couple more primary weapons, Finality's Augur, Tractor, Movement Sword, so on and so on. You guys basically get the idea now. Set bonuses, I have Smoke Jumper and Ion Adapter here. And again, I've gone for high weapons and high super. One thing to know about not swap now is that it has been loosened a little bit with regards to what you are allowed to swap. You are actually allowed now to swap between ammo types and not lose all of your abilities and stuff. So if you're in a match and you swap from something like a special weapon like the Sai Eterna to a primary weapon like the Compact Defender sidearm, you actually won't lose all of your ability or ammo or anything, even though you are swapping from special to primary ammo. It's fine. That works now. You can do that if you want to. So that is something to be aware of. However, what hasn't changed with regards to not swap is that your stats must remain the same between your loadouts. So if I am on my running loadout for my Titan on Prismatic with Curus and I swap to my damage loadout, which again has like fonts on it, plenty of super fonts, plenty of grenade fonts, my stats remain identical. As you can see here, if I'm constantly swapping between these loadouts, my stats do not change one bit. And if they do, it violates not swap and it will remove all of your ability energy. So that is something very important to keep in mind. So that is essentially going to be build number one for the Titan. After that, we have a couple more niche builds, which I don't see myself ever using, but it depends on the kind of scenario that we get in the dungeon. And the first is a Void Titan build with Ursa Furiosa. And the reason I'm taking this in is on the very, very rare chance that we get a boss which has like some crazy AoE attacks that you cannot survive in a well, or for example, pushes you backwards in one direction, and standing behind a banner shield is like the way to go for that. So this is probably never going to be used, but I do have it on just in case. I have banner shield. Fragments wise, we have Cessation, Expulsion, Undermining, Vigilance, gone for Offensive Bulwark, and Control Demolition. Control Demolition is a goated aspect, by the way. One of my favorite aspects. Great for healing, survivability, everything. And the Void artifact perks on the artifact have you covered with regards to getting Devour and stuff, so you don't need to run any of the Devour fragments on your Void Titan. So that's, you know, all done for you. But yeah, like I said, I don't think this build is ever going to be used in the dungeon. I just have it here just in case. Best to be prepared, I suppose. And then finally, the last build is actually a PK's build. This I would see myself using if I swap to a Titan, because PKs are still very good, and they are excellent actually with this brand new SMG here, the M17 Fast Talker. Now, this beautiful SMG can get the role of target lock and the new accelerated assault origin trait if you get it in the shiny variant. I actually have a pretty decent role here. I have ionized heatsink, the shiny version, and target lock. My ideal role would be having attrition orbs in this column. However, unfortunately I don't. That isn't particularly a massive deal. Essentially, what this SMG lets you do is it lets you fire so many bullets without having to reload with PKs. And actually, if the boss allows for it, having a Titan on the tractor roll with PKs is pretty optimal. And I'm actually just going to quickly show you what this build can do DPS wise and show you how easy it is to use and how the tractor player can stay competitive. Okay, so if this is you as the tractor player, I'm just going to show you how easy it is to do this rotation and how it actually puts out some really solid DPS. Now keep in mind, I don't have a Well of Radiance. All I have is Surges and my guns and my Transcendence. So I'm going to tractor call, I'm going to pop my Transcendence, go grenade here into my Curus, then I'll go to my SMG, and I'm just going to shoot it as long as possible. And just look how many bullets I am able to fire here. So many. As soon as you hear the beep beep from the overheat, that is when you swap to tractor. That is your cue to swap. And look here, now I've got my Curus back. You can do that again. Apply tractor. And now I'm just going to wait for the beep beep. Gonna take a minute. There's the beep beep. Swap back to tractor. I'm just going to continue going over and over and over again. I'm about to get my next Curious here in a second. Or my next Crash, sorry. There we go. I'll stop there, and I've got my Transcendence back. But as you can see, that's 3,000 DPS for just using an SMG and tractor. That's not in a well, so add on maybe like another 35%. Obviously, it's not going to be a perfect calculation because I'm using my super as well. But add in a well to that, you're doing some really solid damage. And that is just tractor and the new SMG. So if you have this roll lying around in your vault, and the boss that we come across is going to allow this sort of playstyle, this is probably by far the best when it comes to having your tractor person deal damage at the same time. So just keep this in mind. But that is the last build that I want to talk about for the Titan. So like I said, just to recap, if you are going to be playing Titan, mainly you are going to be on Curious with Consecration, because this is going to be your best damage option in not swap. I have a build ready for Void with Ursa Furiosa, just in case we have a really weird boss, which, you know, Bungie do like to throw us gimmick bosses every once in a while. Think Zoetic Lockset, for example. Then finally a PK setup, again on Prismatic, which is just there for the tractor support role. And actually, I just remembered just before we go, if we get a add clear encounter and you are for some reason on Titan, then just your classic Worm God Consecration build is going to work fine. But like I said, all of these dim links will be in the description, and you'll be able to find all the information for this in one nice place. Finally, we are finishing up with Hunters, and unfortunately, you guys are just not going to be very valuable in this dungeon. I could eat my words and we could have an extremely long-range crit-based boss where Nighthawk Hunters with Still Hunt are going to excel. So I could be very much wrong about that. However, I'm not sure if that's really going to happen or not. And again, just as a piece of meta commentary, Hunters, you guys are not going to be very good in this dungeon race at all, at least based on the surface of what we know so far. Uncivil Discourse is disabled. You guys were doing really good damage with Lucky Pants with Uncivil Discourse. However, that has been disabled, so you cannot do that anymore. The refurbished A499 Sniper has also been disabled, so crit-based hunter damage rotations that include things like Celestial Nighthawk and the Heavy Sniper you cannot use. Also, because of the not swap modifier, you are forced onto your damage exotic, which for, let's say, a Prismatic Hunter is going to be Celestial Nighthawk. The neutral game portion of this exotic is not very good. Same applies for other damage exotics like Orpheus Rig with Quiver. It also doesn't have any neutral game attached to it, which is not great. So in a not swap setting, it's just kind of you know, for Hunters. I'm sorry if you are a Hunter main and you are wanting to be competitive in this race, you are not going to be playing on this class if you care about the competition, or if you just care about doing it well, completing the encounters. But, if you are just going in and all you have is a hunter and you just want to go in and try your best and complete it, I do have you covered. There are a couple builds that I have prepared on my hunter just in case, and the first one is obviously Prismatic. We are going to be on Prismatic with Golden Gun. I have Grapple here, Gambler's Dodge, also gone for Ascension and Gunpowder Gamble with the buffs it received. It's pretty good now, or even better than it was before. Again, I've gone for Facet of Ruin, Courage for increased damage, Purpose for restoration, Sacrifice for some stats, and then Hope so I can get my Ascension back faster. And this is going to be with Celestial Nighthawk, with Still Hunt and a Rocket. Could be anything else here. I've just gone for Still Hunt because, you know, this is only in the context of a boss that is like heavily crit based and also ranged, like an Oryx, for example. So yeah, Celestial Nighthawk, we are going to be running around with that. Not too much to say there. Double special once again because we have high weapons. I haven't grinded too much good hunter armor, so the best I can do is 156 and 150 super here, which is fine. I could get this to 200 if I played Solar Hunter, for example, but Solar Hunter in contest is like, you know, not really very optimal. Artifact perks again is the full suite of Void mods, nothing too different there. And then lastly, I'm also preparing a Void Hunter build with Orpheus Rig, and I've also gone for the Mobius Quiver because if you've seen the super testing video or the DPS video, this class is pretty decent for damage now, which is pretty nice, very bursty when it comes to like short damage phases. But like I said, not too sure to be using this. We've got Leviathan's Breath on here and a Rocket Pulse and Orpheus Rig. Damage loadout is just going to be like Surges and Fonts once again. Fragments doesn't really matter too much. Undermining is a -10 now instead of a -20, which is pretty good. Aspects I have On the Prowl and Trapper's Ambush. Could swap this for something like Stylish Executioner, basically personal preference. This is just nicer for like team support if you need to make your team invisible. Unfortunately, just want to, I feel like I've repeated myself so many times in this video, but yeah, if you care about going through this dungeon efficiently and doing well in it, you are not going to be playing Hunters unless there is just an incredible incredibly long-range boss. So at the end of the day, sorry Hunters, not your race this time round. I actually would have really wanted to play Hunter were it not for Not Swap, because if it wasn't for Not Swap, you could use your exotic class items in neutral to have a really strong neutral game, and then you could swap to Nighthawk for damage, and then you would be able to play as a Hunter very well. You would see people using Hunters, especially with the changes that Golden Gun got, with it being a very good super now, you know, competing with Curus. You've also got Void Hunter shenanigans with things like Graviton Forfeit for neutral games, very good now. However, unfortunately, you just cannot use these anymore. But anyway, that is going to be all of your builds for the Equilibrium dungeon. I hope this video informed you guys a little bit on what to go ahead and use and prepare for the dungeon. If you are going to be going on Saturday, I really do wish you the best of luck. Contest experiences are Destiny at its best, and I really hope that Equilibrium is a solid entry to the RAD catalog. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Like I said, throughout the video, all of these dim links to the builds will be in the description for you to go and copy. And once again, best of luck in the dungeon. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye for now, dear viewers.